The vast emptiness of space stretched out endlessly, dotted with the faint glow of distant stars. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, near a swirling nebula painted in shades of purple and blue, the Galactic fleet gathered to celebrate. The ships, large and small, floated side by side like a city in the sky. Their engines hummed softly, and their lights twinkled against the dark backdrop of space. It was a moment of triumph after years of war. Commander Jack Lawson stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Aegis Dawn. His sharp eyes scanned the scene outside the large window. Crew members moved around him, their faces bright with smiles. Laughter echoed through the ship as pilots and engineers shared stories of battles won and friends lost. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no immediate threat looming over them. The Krillians, a fierce alien race that had once seemed unstoppable, were finally defeated. Jack allowed himself a small smile. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms as he watched the celebrations unfold. On the main screen, video feeds from other ships showed crews raising glasses and cheering. Someone even started singing an old victory song, and soon the entire fleet joined in. It was hard not to feel proud of what they had accomplished together. But not everyone was caught up in the joy. Lieutenant Emily Carter sat at her station in the sensor bay, her brow furrowed in concentration. While others celebrated, she stared at her screen, studying the data streaming in from the ship's sensors. Something wasn't right. She noticed faint blips appearing on the edge of their detection range, small disturbances that didn't match any known ship signatures or natural phenomena. At first, she thought it might be leftover debris from the battle, but the patterns were too organized, too deliberate. Daniel Brooks, another officer in the sensor bay, noticed her frown. "What's wrong?" he asked, leaning over to look at her screen. "I'm not sure," Emily replied, her voice low so as not to draw attention. "These readings, they're strange. They're not Krillian, that's for sure. But I can't figure out what they are." Daniel scratched his head. "Maybe it's just interference from the nebula." Emily shook her head. "No, this is different. Look at the energy levels. They're way higher than anything we've seen before." Before Daniel could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Jack's voice came through, calm but firm. "Attention, fleet. This is Commander Lawson. Today marks the end of a long and difficult chapter. We faced impossible odds, and yet here we stand, victorious. Let this day remind us of what we can achieve when we work together." The crew erupted into applause, clapping and whistling. Even Emily paused her work for a moment to listen. Jack's words carried weight, and for a brief moment, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe everything would be okay after all. Still, the strange signals nagged at her. She glanced at Daniel, who gave her a reassuring nod. "You should tell them," he said quietly. Emily hesitated. Interrupting the celebration felt wrong, especially when everyone was so happy. But deep down, she knew she couldn't ignore it. Taking a deep breath, she opened a private channel to the bridge. "Commander Lawson, this is Lieutenant Carter. I think you should see this." There was a pause on the other end. Then Jack's voice replied, "I'll be right there." As Emily waited for him to arrive, she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Whatever those signals were, they weren't going to let the fleet enjoy its victory for long. Jack arrived at the sensor bay moments later, his boots clicking against the metal floor. He glanced at Emily, who was still staring intently at her screen. Daniel stood nearby, arms crossed, looking just as puzzled. Jack didn't waste time with pleasantries. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone serious but calm. Emily turned to face him, her expression tense. "Sir, I've been picking up some unusual readings on the edge of our detection range. At first, I thought it might be nothing, just interference or leftover debris from the battle. But these signals, they're not random. They're moving and they're organized." Jack stepped closer to her station, his sharp eyes scanning the data displayed on the screen. The blips were faint, almost invisible, unless you knew what to look for. "How long have you noticed this?" he asked. "Just a few minutes," Emily admitted. "I wanted to make sure before bringing it up. These energy signatures are unlike anything we've seen before. They're too strong to belong to the Krillians, and they don't match any known ship types in our database." Daniel chimed in, pointing at the screen. "Look here, sir. See how the patterns shift. It's almost like they're scanning us, or testing our defenses." Jack frowned. The news wasn't what he wanted to hear, especially now. The fleet had just come through a grueling war, and everyone was exhausted. The last thing they needed was another mystery to solve. Still, he couldn't ignore the possibility that something dangerous might be lurking out there. "Have you tried hailing them?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "Not yet, sir. The signals are too weak to pinpoint their exact location. If we send a message, we risk giving away our position before we even know who or what we're dealing with." Jack nodded slowly, his mind racing. "Keep monitoring them," he said, "and let me know the moment you find anything new." With that, he turned and left the sensor bay, leaving Emily and Daniel to continue their work. Back on the bridge, Jack stared out at the nebula, his thoughts heavy. The celebration was still going strong, with laughter and music filling the air. Crew members passed by him, offering congratulations and pats on the back. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing. He trusted Emily's instincts. If she thought something was off, then it probably was. As the hours ticked by, the strange signals grew stronger. Emily kept Jack updated, her voice growing more urgent with each report. "Sir, whatever these things are, they're getting closer," she said during one call. "And their energy levels are spiking. It's like they're charging up for something." Jack clenched his jaw. "Do we have any idea how many there are?" "Hard to say," Emily replied. "But based on the patterns, I'd estimate at least a dozen sources. Maybe more." Jack rubbed his temples, trying to think clearly. A dozen unknown ships, possibly hostile, appearing right after their victory against the Krillians. It was too much of a coincidence. Were they remnants of the Krillian forces, regrouping for another attack? Or was this something entirely different? The question gnawed at him, but he knew he couldn't panic. Not yet. For now, the fleet remained safe, and morale was high. He decided to keep the information quiet, at least until they had a clearer picture of the situation. Telling everyone about the mysterious signals might cause unnecessary fear, and fear could lead to mistakes. But as the night wore on, Jack found it harder to focus on the celebrations. Every cheer and laugh seemed to echo louder in his ears, masking the growing tension inside him. Something was coming. He could feel it. And when it arrived, the galaxy might never be the same again. Hours passed, and the strange signals grew stronger. Emily kept her eyes glued to the sensor display, her fingers flying over the controls as she tried to make sense of the data. The blips were no longer faint whispers on the edge of their detection range. They were now clear, distinct shapes moving steadily toward the fleet. Whatever they weren't hiding anymore. Jack stood on the bridge, his arms crossed as he stared out at the nebula. He had ordered the crew to maintain a low profile, keeping weapons powered down and engines idling. The last thing he wanted was to provoke something they didn't understand. But despite his efforts to stay calm, unease gnawed at him. The celebration had died down by now, replaced by an uneasy silence that hung heavy in the air. Then it happened. Alarms blared across the ship, red lights flashing as the sensors detected a massive surge of energy. Jack spun around just as one of the officers shouted, "Commander, multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace." The view outside the window changed in an instant. Dozens of enormous ships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the fleet like wolves circling prey. They were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Massive blackened monoliths with jagged edges and glowing blue lines running along their hulls. Each ship bristled with weapon systems, their designs sleek yet menacing. The sight sent a chill through everyone who saw them. "What are those things?" someone whispered, their voice trembling. Jack didn't answer. His mind raced as he took in the sheer size of the vessels. Even the largest ships in the Galactic fleet looked tiny compared to these newcomers. Panic began to spread among the crew, but Jack forced himself to stay focused. "Hail them," he ordered. "Now." The communications officer nodded and quickly opened a channel. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Jack Lawson of the Aegis Dawn. Please identify yourselves." There was no response. The ships simply floated there, silent and unmoving. Their glowing lines pulsed faintly, casting an eerie light across the void. Jack repeated the hail, louder this time, but still there was no reply. The tension on the bridge grew thicker with each passing second. Emily rushed onto the bridge, her face pale. "Sir, I've analyzed their energy signatures. These ships, they're far more advanced than anything we have. If they wanted to destroy us, they could do it in seconds." Jack nodded grimly. He already suspected as much. Still, he refused to give in to fear. "Order all ships to assume defensive positions," he said. "Activate shields and prepare for possible engagement." As the fleet scrambled to follow his orders, one of the massive ships moved closer. Its movements were slow but deliberate, exuding confidence or arrogance. Then, without warning, it fired, not at the fleet, but at a nearby moon housing a secret research facility. The explosion was blinding, lighting up the darkness with a burst of white-hot energy. Debris shot out in all directions, and shockwaves rippled through space. The crew on the bridge gasped in horror. Why would they attack the moon? Someone asked, their voice shaking. Jack's jaw tightened. The moon wasn't just a barren rock. It was home to a classified project studying Krillian technology. Whoever these intruders were, they clearly knew where to strike. Before he could process what had happened, another transmission came through. This time, it wasn't silent. A single word echoed over the comms, repeated endlessly. "Earth." The room fell silent. Jack's heart sank. Earth? It didn't make sense. Humanity's homeworld had been isolated for centuries, cut off from the rest of the galaxy after the collapse. No one had heard from them in generations. And yet, here they were, arriving with overwhelming force. "Commander," Emily's voice broke the silence. She looked at him, her eyes wide with fear. "What do we do now?" Jack didn't answer right away. He stared at the monstrous ships looming outside the window, his mind racing. Whoever, or whatever, these newcomers were, one thing was clear. They weren't here to negotiate. The word Earth echoed through the fleet's communication channels, leaving confusion in its wake. Jack stood frozen on the bridge, his mind struggling to make sense of what he had just heard. Earth. How could it be Earth? The planet had been silent for centuries, retreating from galactic affairs after the collapse. Humanity's homeworld was supposed to be a relic of the past, not a looming threat in the present. Samantha Hall, the fleet's intelligence officer, hurried onto the bridge. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with alarm. She glanced at Jack before turning to Emily. "Did they really say Earth?" she asked, her voice trembling. Emily nodded. "Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what they said." Jack turned to Samantha. "What do we know about Earth's current status? Anything useful?" Samantha hesitated, clearly uneasy. "Not much, sir. Most records are classified or lost. But there are rumors, whispers that Earth never stopped advancing. Some say they used their isolation to rebuild and innovate, creating technologies far beyond what we have today." Jack frowned. If those rumors were true, then the sheer size and power of these ships made terrible sense. He clenched his fists, trying to think clearly. "Find me everything you can," he ordered. "I need answers. Now." As Samantha rushed off to dig through the archives, Jack addressed the fleet over a secure channel. "All ships, this is Commander Lawson. We've encountered an unidentified force claiming to represent Earth. Until we know more, maintain defensive positions and avoid provoking them. Do not fire unless fired upon." His words did little to calm the growing panic. Across the fleet, Crew members whispered among themselves, their faces etched with fear. Earth wasn't supposed to be capable of something like this. It was as if history itself had been rewritten. Hours later, Samantha returned to the bridge, carrying a data tablet. Her expression was grim. "Sir, I found something in the classified archives. Decades ago, there were reports of Earth launching secret projects to develop advanced weapons and ships. They called it the Reclamation Initiative, a plan to reclaim humanity's place in the galaxy by force if necessary." Jack's stomach sank. So this isn't just a random attack. They're here on purpose. Samantha nodded. It looks that way. According to the files, Earth views the galaxy's expansion into certain sectors as a violation of its sovereignty. They see themselves as the rightful rulers of human space, and anyone else as trespassers. Jack let out a slow breath. The implications were staggering. If Earth truly believed it owned these regions of space, then the fleet's presence here was seen as an act of aggression. No wonder they had attacked the research facility on the moon. It was a message, a warning to back off. "Do we know who's leading them?" Jack asked. Samantha tapped the tablet, pulling up an image of a woman with sharp features and piercing eyes. "This is Rachel Morgan. She's listed as the commander of Earth's forces. Her tactics are described as ruthless but effective. If she's in charge, we're dealing with someone who won't hesitate to destroy us." Jack stared at the image, his jaw tightening. Whoever Rachel Morgan was, she had already proven she wasn't afraid to use overwhelming force. The question now was whether she would listen to reason, or if diplomacy was even possible. On the main screen, one of the massive ships moved closer, its glowing lines pulsing brighter. A transmission came through, breaking the tense silence. "This is Commander Rachel Morgan of Earth's sovereign fleet. Withdraw immediately or face annihilation." The message sent a shiver through the crew. Jack stepped forward, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "Commander Morgan, this is Jack Lawson of the Galactic Fleet. We seek peaceful dialogue. There's no need for further violence." There was a long pause. Then Rachel's voice replied, cold and unyielding. "You've trespassed on sovereign territory. Leave now or suffer the consequences." Jack glanced at his crew, seeing the same mix of fear and determination reflected in their eyes. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear. Earth wasn't going to back down. And neither could they. The transmission ended, leaving an uneasy silence on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn. Jack stood still, his mind racing as he processed Rachel Morgan's ultimatum. Her voice had been icy and final, offering no room for negotiation. The fleet was trapped between retreating without a fight or standing their ground against an enemy that could crush them with ease. Lieutenant Emily Carter broke the silence, her voice soft but urgent. "Commander, if we retreat now, we're abandoning this entire sector to Earth. They'll take control of everything, resources, trade routes, even planets. We can't just walk away." Jack turned to look at her, seeing the concern etched on her face. He knew she was right, but the cost of defiance could be catastrophic. "And if we stay?" he asked, his tone heavy. "Earth's ships are bigger, faster, and better armed than anything we've got. Fighting them would mean losing countless lives, and probably the fleet itself." Emily hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. She didn't have an answer, and neither did anyone else on the bridge. The weight of the decision rested entirely on Jack's shoulders. Before he could respond, Captain Ryan Cole's voice crackled over the comms. "Lawson, this is Cole. You can't seriously be thinking about running. If we back down now, Earth will see it as weakness. They'll push further into our territory until there's nothing left." Jack sighed. Ryan Cole was one of the most aggressive captains in the fleet, known for his fiery temper and refusal to back down from a fight. His words carried weight, especially among the younger officers who admired his boldness. But Jack also knew that Cole's impulsiveness could lead to disaster. "Cole," Jack replied, keeping his voice calm, "we don't even know what they want yet. Attacking them blindly would be suicide. Let's try talking first." Cole snorted, Talking won't stop them from blowing us out of the sky. They already made that clear when they destroyed the moon. If you won't act, then I will." Before Jack could argue, several ships under Cole's command powered up their engines and moved into formation. Their shields flared to life, and weapons systems came online. It was a clear message. They weren't leaving without a fight. Jack clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. He couldn't order Cole to stand down, not without risking mutiny, but he also couldn't let the situation spiral out of control. "All ships, hold your positions," he commanded over the fleet-wide channel. "Do not engage unless fired upon." His words went unheeded. Cole's group continued to advance, closing the gap between them and Earth's dreadnoughts. For a moment, it seemed like the standoff might end peacefully. Then, without warning, one of Earth's ships opened fire. The blast was devastating. A single shot tore through the shields of one of Cole's cruisers, slicing it in half. The explosion lit up the void, sending debris spiraling into space. Panic erupted across the fleet as alarms blared and crew members scrambled to respond. "Cole, pull back," Jack shouted, his voice rising. "You're getting your people killed." But Cole wasn't listening. Enraged by the attack, he ordered his remaining ships to return fire. Lasers and missiles streaked toward the Earth vessels, only to bounce harmlessly off their impenetrable shields. In response, Earth's fleet unleashed a barrage of firepower, targeting Cole's ships with precision. Within minutes, 3 more cruisers were destroyed, their wreckage drifting silently in the darkness. Jack watched in horror as the skirmish unfolded. He wanted to intervene, to stop the senseless loss of life, but there was nothing he could do. The fleet was divided, torn between those who wanted to fight and those who wanted to survive. And Earth's forces showed no mercy. As the battle raged on, Jack realized the truth. This wasn't just about territory or resources. It was about power. Earth had returned to reclaim its place as humanity's dominant force, and it wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone who stood in its way. The battle between Cole's ships and Earth's dreadnoughts raged on, filling the void with bursts of light and deafening explosions. Jack stood frozen on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, his hands gripping the railing as he watched the chaos unfold. The sight of burning wreckage and drifting debris made his stomach churn. Every second felt like an eternity, each loss cutting deeper than the last. Cole's forces were outmatched. Their weapons couldn't penetrate Earth's shields, while every shot from the dreadnoughts struck with devastating precision. One by one, Cole's ships fell, their crews either dead or stranded in escape pods. The rest of the fleet looked on helplessly, torn between fear and anger. Some captains wanted to join the fight, believing that surrendering would only embolden Earth. Others argued that further resistance was suicide. Lieutenant Emily Carter approached Jack, her face pale but determined. "Sir, we can't let this continue," she said softly. "If we don't act now, there won't be anyone left to negotiate with." Jack nodded slowly, his mind racing. He knew she was right. Watching Cole's reckless defiance end in disaster had shaken him. But it also made one thing clear. Earth wasn't interested in compromise, at least not yet. Still, he couldn't afford to make the same mistake. If they were going to survive, they needed a plan. Something smarter than charging headfirst into certain destruction. "Emily," Jack said, turning to face her, "what do you know about their ships? Any weaknesses? Anything at all?" Emily hesitated, glancing at Daniel Brooks, who stood nearby. "We've been analyzing their energy signatures," she began. "Their shields are incredibly strong, but they seem to pulse, like they're recharging after heavy use. If we time our attacks carefully, we might be able to exploit that." Jack's eyes narrowed. It was a long shot, but it was better than nothing. "How long would it take to test this theory?" he asked. "A few minutes," Daniel replied. "But we'd need to get close enough to gather more data. And if they catch us—" He didn't finish the sentence. Jack understood the risk. Getting too close to Earth's ships could mean instant death. But staying put wasn't an option either. With Cole's forces nearly wiped out, the rest of the fleet was vulnerable, and Earth's patience wouldn't last forever. "All right," Jack said, making up his mind. "Prepare a small strike team. We'll send a fast scout ship to gather intel while keeping the rest of the fleet at a safe distance. If we find a weakness, we'll hit them hard and fast." Emily nodded, already relaying orders to the crew. As preparations began, Jack addressed the fleet over the comms. "This is Commander Lawson. I know tensions are high and emotions are running wild, but we can't let fear or anger dictate our actions. For now, hold your positions and trust me. We'll find a way through this, together." His words did little to calm the growing unrest. Whispers of doubt spread among the captains, questioning whether Jack was doing enough, or too much. Some accused him of cowardice for not fighting back sooner, while others feared he was leading them straight into another slaughter. Jack ignored the criticism. He had no time for politics or pride, not when lives depended on his decisions. As the scout ship launched, Jack turned to Samantha Hall, who had been quietly observing from the corner of the bridge. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice low. "Do you believe we stand a chance?" Samantha hesitated before answering. "Earth's forces are powerful, sir, but they're also unpredictable. If we can show them we're willing to fight, even just a little, they might see value in negotiating instead of destroying us completely." Jack nodded, though he wasn't convinced. Earth's commander, Rachel Morgan, had already shown she wasn't afraid to use overwhelming force. Whether she would listen to reason remained to be seen. Minutes later, the scout ship returned with critical information. Emily rushed onto the bridge, her face flushed with excitement. "Sir, we found something," she said. "Their shields do have a weak point. It's small, but if we target it precisely, we might be able to disable one of their ships." Jack stared at her, hope flickering in his chest for the first time in hours. "Then let's do it," he said firmly. "But we'll need everyone working together. No more divisions, no more arguments. Are you with me?" Emily and Daniel exchanged determined looks before nodding. "Yes, sir," they said in unison. For the first time since Earth's arrival, Jack felt a glimmer of unity within the fleet. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to give them a fighting chance. Jack wasted no time putting his plan into action. He gathered the fleet's remaining captains for an emergency meeting, laying out the strategy Emily and Daniel had uncovered. The weak point in Earth's shields was small and fleeting, but if they coordinated their attacks perfectly, they might be able to disable one of the Dreadnoughts. It wasn't a guaranteed victory, but it was a chance, a slim hope to turn the tide. "Here's what we're going to do," Jack said, his voice firm as he addressed the group. "We'll divide into two teams. One will draw their fire, keeping them distracted. The other will target the weak spot. Timing is everything. If we miss, we're done." The captains exchanged uneasy glances. Some looked skeptical, while others seemed willing to try anything. Captain Ryan Cole, whose surviving ships were battered but still operational, spoke up first. "You want us to play bait? After everything that's happened?" "It's not about pride," Jack replied, his tone sharp. "It's about survival. We all know what happens if we don't work together. Do you want to end up like your last squadron?" Cole clenched his jaw, but didn't argue. He knew Jack was right. Reluctantly, he nodded. "Fine. But if this doesn't work, I'm calling the shots next time." Jack ignored the comment, focusing instead on finalizing the details. "Emily and Daniel will guide the strike team. Their data is the only reason we have a shot at this. Everyone else, prepare your crews. We move in 10 minutes. As the captains dispersed, Jack turned to Samantha Hall. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "Do you believe they'll follow through?" Samantha hesitated before answering. "They will for now. But if this fails, the fleet might fracture completely. You'll need more than just a plan to hold them together." Jack nodded grimly. He didn't have time to worry about politics or loyalty. All that mattered was making sure Earth's forces didn't wipe them out entirely. 10 minutes later, The fleet sprang into action. Cole's ships led the distraction team, charging toward Earth's dreadnoughts with reckless abandon. Lasers streaked across space as they fired wildly, drawing the attention of the massive ships. The rest of the fleet hung back, waiting for the signal. On the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, Emily and Daniel monitored the enemy's movements, their eyes glued to the sensor displays. "Their shields are pulsing," Emily reported, her voice tense. "Now's our chance." Jack gave the order, and the strike team surged forward. Led by Lieutenant Carter's precise calculations, they aimed their weapons at the weak spot on the nearest dreadnought. For a moment, it seemed like the plan might fail. Their shots glanced off the shield, causing little damage. Then, with a final volley, the shield flickered and collapsed. "Yes," Daniel shouted, slamming his fist on the console. "We did it." But their celebration was short-lived. Even without its shield, the dreadnought was still a formidable opponent. Its weapons roared to life, targeting the strike team with deadly accuracy. Jack ordered a retreat, but not before sending a boarding party to infiltrate the crippled ship. Leading the party himself, Jack stepped onto the shuttle alongside Emily and a squad of Marines. As they approached the dreadnought, he couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and determination. This was their best, and possibly only, chance to confront Earth's commander face to face. Inside the dreadnought, the air was cold and metallic. The corridors were dimly lit, and the hum of machinery echoed around them. They moved cautiously, avoiding patrols as they made their way to the command center. When they finally reached it, Jack found himself standing face to face with Rachel Morgan. She stood tall, her expression unreadable. "Commander Lawson," she said coolly, "I didn't expect you to come here personally." Jack took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Rachel Morgan," he replied, "we don't have to fight. There's enough room in this galaxy for both of us." Rachel studied him for a long moment before responding. "Perhaps, but humanity's future isn't decided by words. It's decided by strength." Jack met her gaze, refusing to look away. Strength doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it means knowing when to stop. For the first time, Rachel's icy demeanor faltered. She hesitated, as if weighing his words. In that moment, Jack realized their fate rested not on weapons or shields, but on the choices they made next. The tension in the command center of the dreadnought was thick enough to cut with a knife. Rachel Morgan stood at the center, her arms crossed and her piercing eyes locked onto Jack Lawson. The faint hum of the ship's systems filled the silence as both commanders sized each other up. Jack could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Everything. The lives of his crew, the fate of the fleet, even the future of human space, rested on what happened next. Rachel broke the silence first, her voice calm but sharp. "You think words can stop this? After everything my people have endured, after centuries of isolation while you expanded unchecked, do you really believe talking will change anything?" Jack stepped forward, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. "I'm not asking you to forget the past," he said, his tone steady. "But destroying us won't fix it either. Earth may be strong, but strength alone doesn't make right. If you keep pushing, all you'll create is more death and more enemies." Rachel's expression didn't soften, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She glanced at Emily standing quietly behind Jack, then back at him. "And what would you propose instead?" she asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. "A treaty. A promise to leave your territory untouched. How long before someone else decides to test our resolve?" Jack hesitated. He knew she had a point. Trust wasn't something that could be built overnight, especially when so much blood had already been spilled, but surrendering to fear and anger wouldn't help anyone. "Start small," he said finally. "Let us withdraw from this sector for now. Give both sides time to regroup, to talk without weapons pointed at each other. If we rush into conflict, neither of us wins." Rachel studied him carefully, her mind clearly working through the possibilities. Behind her, the control panels displayed updates from the battle raging outside. Her forces still held the advantage, but Jack's gambit had shaken them. For the first time since their arrival, Earth's commander seemed unsure of her next move. Emily spoke up suddenly, her voice soft but firm. "Commander Morgan, I know how powerful Earth's fleet is. But power isn't just about dominating others. It's about protecting what matters. If you destroy us, you'll lose any chance of building trust with the rest of humanity. Is that really what Earth wants?" Rachel turned to look at her, surprise flickering across her face. Emily's words struck a nerve. It was clear she hadn't expected such a direct appeal, not from someone who wasn't even part of the command structure. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Finally, Rachel let out a slow breath. "You're risking a lot coming here," she said, her gaze shifting between Jack and Emily. "Do you honestly think this truce will work?" Jack nodded. "It's better than the alternative. Neither of us can afford another war. Not now. Let's step back, take stock, and figure out how to coexist. That's the only way forward." Rachel remained silent for several seconds, her jaw tightening as she wrestled with the decision. Then, with a resigned sigh, she turned to one of her officers nearby. "Order the fleet to stand down," she said. "No further attacks until we've assessed the situation." The officer hesitated, clearly surprised by the order, but quickly relayed it. Moments later, the alarms on the Aegis Dawn fell silent as Earth's ships powered down their weapons. Across the fleet, weary crews breathed sighs of relief, though none dared celebrate yet. Back in the Dreadnoughts command center, Rachel fixed Jack with a steely glare. "This isn't over," she warned. "If you break your word, if you push us again, there won't be another warning." Jack met her gaze without flinching. "Understood. And if you cross us, we'll fight back. But let's hope it doesn't come to that." As the boarding party prepared to leave, Rachel watched them go, her expression unreadable. When they were gone, she turned to her officers, her voice low but resolute. "We'll give them their ceasefire, for now. But mark my words, Earth will claim its rightful place in the galaxy, one way or another." Outside, the fleet began to regroup, battered but alive. Jack returned to the Aegis Dawn, his heart heavy with the knowledge that peace was fragile and temporary. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: humanity's future would never be the same. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, Jack stood on the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of space. Earth's dreadnoughts still loomed nearby, their massive forms casting long shadows across the void. The ceasefire was holding, for now, but the tension in the air was palpable. Every crew member moved cautiously, their eyes darting between their stations and the view outside. No one trusted that the calm would last. Emily approached Jack, her face lined with worry. "Do you think she meant it?" she asked quietly. "About standing down?" Jack didn't answer right away. He leaned against the railing, his arms crossed as he thought about Rachel Morgan's words. Her promise to step back felt genuine, but there was something behind her eyes, a cold determination that made him uneasy. "She meant it for now," he finally said. "But Rachel isn't someone who backs down easily. She'll use this time to plan her next move." Emily frowned. "So we're just buying time?" Jack nodded. "That's all we can do for now. We need to regroup, repair our ships, and figure out how to deal with Earth moving forward. But if we let our guard down, even for a second, they'll crush us." The crew worked silently around them, their movements efficient but strained. The battle had taken its toll, not just on the fleet's ships, but on their morale. Many had lost friends or family members during the skirmish, and the scars ran deep. Jack could see it in their faces, fear, anger, and exhaustion all mixed together. Samantha Hall joined them, carrying a data tablet filled with reports from the other captains. "Sir," she began, her voice low, "the fleet is falling apart. Cole's group is demanding immediate retaliation, while others want to retreat entirely. Half the captains won't even speak to each other." Jack sighed heavily. He'd known this was coming. The attack had fractured not just their defenses but their unity. "We need to hold them together," he said firmly. "If we start turning on each other, Earth wins without firing another shot." Samantha hesitated before speaking again. "What do you plan to do? You can't force everyone to agree." "No," Jack admitted, "but I can give them a reason to stay. If we show them there's still hope, if we prove we can stand up to Earth, they might come around." As the hours passed, Jack addressed the fleet over a secure channel. His voice was steady, though his heart was heavy. "This isn't the end," he told them. "We've faced impossible odds before, and we've always found a way through. Earth may be strong, but so are we. Together, we'll rebuild, and we'll find a way to protect what's ours." His words sparked a flicker of hope among some of the crew, but others remained unconvinced. Captain Ryan Cole, in particular, refused to back down. Over the comms, his voice crackled with barely contained rage. "Lawson, you're making a mistake. Retreating now only gives Earth more power. They'll take everything unless we hit them first." Jack clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to argue. He knew Cole's anger stemmed from grief and frustration, but giving in to emotion wouldn't help anyone. "Cole," he replied evenly, "we don't have the strength to fight them head-on. Not yet. If you charge in blindly, you'll get yourself and your crew killed." Cole didn't respond, but Jack could feel the resentment simmering beneath the surface. It was clear the man wasn't ready to listen. Not yet, anyway. Meanwhile, Emily and Daniel continued analyzing the data gathered during the battle. They discovered something unsettling. Earth's ships weren't just advanced. They were modular, designed to adapt and evolve mid-conflict. "They're learning," Emily explained to Jack, her brow furrowed. "Every attack we made gave them information about our tactics. Next time, they'll be even harder to beat." Jack absorbed the news silently. The implications were grim. Earth wasn't just a threat. It was a growing one. If they couldn't find a way to counteract Earth's technological edge, the galaxy's days of independence were numbered. As the fleet prepared to withdraw, Jack took one last look at the nebula outside the window. Its swirling colors seemed dimmer now, tainted by the shadow of what had happened here. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity's future would be shaped not by weapons or shields, but by the choices they made, and whether they could rise above their divisions to face a common enemy. The fleet limped away from the nebula, its ships battered and bruised, but still intact. Jack stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, watching as Earth's dreadnoughts faded into the distance. The ceasefire held, for now, but the weight of what had happened pressed heavily on his shoulders. They had survived, but at a cost. Lives lost, ships destroyed, and trust shattered, not just between them and Earth, but within the fleet itself. Emily approached him quietly, her expression somber. "Do you think it's over?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack shook his head. "No, this is just the beginning. Earth didn't come all this way to let us walk away forever. They'll be back, and next time, they won't stop until they've taken what they want." Emily frowned, gripping the railing beside him. "Then what do we do? How do we fight something like that?" Jack turned to look at her, his eyes tired but determined. "We adapt. We learn. Earth's ships are advanced, but they're not invincible. If we can figure out how they work, and how to counter them, we might stand a chance." Samantha joined them, carrying a stack of reports. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she handed one to Jack. "Sir, we've analyzed their movements during the battle. They're methodical, almost too perfect. It's like they knew exactly what we were going to do before we did it." Jack's jaw tightened. He had suspected as much. Earth's forces weren't just stronger. They were smarter, using every encounter to gather intelligence and improve. "They're learning," he said grimly. "And if we don't stay ahead of them, we'll lose everything." The crew worked tirelessly in the hours that followed, repairing damaged systems and piecing together strategies for the future. Morale was low, but there was a flicker of determination among some of the officers. They knew survival wasn't guaranteed, but giving up wasn't an option either. As the fleet regrouped, Jack called another meeting with the captains. This time, the atmosphere was quieter, less hostile. Even Ryan Cole seemed subdued, though his anger still simmered beneath the surface. Jack addressed them plainly. We can't keep fighting each other. Earth will exploit every division, every weakness. Our only chance is to work together, no matter how hard it is. Cole didn't argue, though his silence spoke volumes. For now, at least he was willing to listen. In the days that followed, Emily and Daniel made progress analyzing Earth's technology. They discovered patterns in their energy signatures, small vulnerabilities that could be exploited if timed perfectly. It wasn't much, but it gave the fleet a sliver of hope. Jack spent his nights staring out at the stars, wondering if peace was truly possible, or if humanity was destined to destroy itself. He thought about Rachel Morgan, her cold resolve, and fleeting moment of hesitation. Maybe, just maybe, there was room for negotiation. But until then, the galaxy would remain divided, its people caught between fear and ambition. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, Emily stood beside him, gazing out at the endless void. Do you think we'll ever find a way to coexist? She asked softly. Jack didn't answer right away. He wanted to believe it was possible, but history had taught him otherwise. Still, he couldn't give up. Not yet. I don't know, he admitted. But I do know one thing. If we stop trying, we've already lost. As the fleet drifted through the darkness, the question lingered unanswered. Earth had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again.